The following is a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio. Keep your mission on your mind and your mind on your mission. This is Mission Minded with Michael Coleman.
Welcome back, my friends, to Mission Minded. Keep your mind, your mission, in your mind. He is Michael Coleman. Lots of M's coming at you today. Give me some M words, my friend. Your head is full of you sound horrible, but you look great.
Yeah. Well, how about maladaptive? Because that's how I feel.
You need some Mucinex is what you need.
Yeah, Mucinex. That's right.
Well, I hope you feel a lot better than you sound, but you still are crystal clear in this end. So we love having you on Mission Minded. Of course, we're back to show up with another show called Bite by Bite. That's a show that's specific to the Heart of Alabama Food Bank and, of course, to food pantries around the country. And you guys do such a wonderful job taking care of 35 counties in the great state of Alabama. We don't do emails a whole lot. We don't get a ton of emails. info@tonycurryradio.net. When we do answer them. And we hadn't done emails in quite some time, and I think it'd be a perfect time to do that. I'm gonna start because you're a businessman. You've been on both sides of businesses. You've done marketing, you name it. You've been, and that's why we do this. I call it a business show. I think people are better off and smarter for listening to your ideas. And of course, you will always admit that you're always learning. You know, you're trying to be smarter today than you were yesterday.
Yeah.
This government thing right now, what Donald Trump is doing is scaring the bejeebers out of me a little bit. It's just it's throwing the baby out with the bathwater, particularly when I hear that some scientists that were working on the bird flu thing got fired and then they made a mistake and they're bringing it's like they're cleaning house. And I've seen this in places I've worked before, and I'm sure you have too. Unfortunately, Hopefully you're not that guy that walked in and said, listen, I get a clean house. Normally you meet with everybody, you see if their job is important enough to keep, you find out what they're going to be doing for you next, and you make a judgment. In this particular case, it's like they're cleaning house. They're throwing everything out, and nothing's being said about bringing any of these people back. I'm assuming that, and I don't even know what the numbers are, I'm assuming a lot of these people are going to be coming back to work. And it does surprise me. We'll start right there. Does it surprise you how many people are taking the buyout? Because that tells you something. If people are getting paid through September, that makes me wonder, are you really doing anything anyway?
Well, see, and that if you take that whole thing together, I think this is the picture that it paints. There is so much inefficiency in government. It sounds like when we say we're going to cut like that, I think under Biden, they just added 92,000 jobs for new IRS. And the idea is, we're going to have higher enforcement. So we're going to be able to recoup that money and bring more money into the Treasury and make sure people aren't, we got people for audits and all that kind of stuff. I saw it in the Department of Interiors where our trails and all that, and people are like, well, who's going to clean the trail? Who's going to repair the signs? Who's going to do all those kind of things? But oftentimes you would have to go look within a department because there's an old rule that with government, like if you think you only need, and maybe it's my head cold, it's keeping me forgetting exactly what to say. But the bottom line is whatever you feel like I'm cutting to the bear, there's always another 10% that you can cut because our departments are so inflated. Mm-hmm. And lots of times it's because the governments are not run as a business. And so you typically are not squeezing out as much juice as you can get out of each employee.
Okay.
And so lots of times you will have an overabundance because nobody's like burning the midnight oil, trying to push agendas and lots of times it has nothing to do with the person. You get brought into a system and you're going to apply for a project like a license to improve your building. Well, it's got to go through 8 departments for approval and to get a builder's permit. And so it goes on one person's desk and you would say, okay, let's say they're real motivated. They're like, yeah, I want to get this stuff off. Well, it's just going to go to another guy's desk because the whole system is not full of motivated workers. Mm-hmm. And so it lags behind. And so lots of times you can clean out a lot of people And then you're just looking at, okay, how do I do more with less? Well, the government's never really had to do that. That's not a principle that's practiced within government. And and so it seems now, first of all, anybody who loses their jobs, my heart goes out to them.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
this has I
And,
don't want this.
by the way, we're only hearing. I was watching NBC Nightly News, and I'm seeing park rangers and people that have had these jobs that have taken care of vets. You know, this one guy, his job was just to push vets around in wheelchairs all day. And I mean, I hate that for people like that. But
Yeah.
but you can't go situation by situation because you never get to where you want to go. So continue.
Well,
And
that's
I
what.
get that. I understand that.
Well, and I'll give you a good example. Just here in the state of Alabama, in a school system. So when I went to Leadership Montgomery back in 2018, that we were having a crisis here. The state of Alabama had taken over the Montgomery County school system. And so they were looking at trying to make cuts. And they had all the people laid out. They're trying to look at position wise what makes sense. And they're like, oh, we don't really, or we can consolidate these positions. And they're like, oh, well, you would be firing Francine and she takes care of her mother.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
and so everybody has a story.
Mhm.
And that's what it feels like is you're ripping people out of their livelihood. And in some cases that may be the case. But what you have to ask yourself as a nation, I mean, is what kind of government do we want? Do we want to continue to waste billions upon billions upon billions of dollars um, in jobs that because we have inefficiency? Now, to me, nothing speaks to a greater inefficiency than 6% of people coming to work. Now, are they doing some work at home or on their own? Yeah, but I personally know a good example. I personally know of a wildlife person who's a federal employee,
Mhm.
and he's given a territory. And on a day-to-day basis, he doesn't report to anybody.
Yeah.
And so he goes out uh, one day and he's like, "Oh, they've kind of assigned me to help with keeping animals off the runway." Uh, you know, well, and this is at an air base, and so you're like, but lots of times he's just sitting there fishing
Yeah.
because there's nothing to do. So I'm just saying, there's anecdotal evidence on both sides, but the reality is our government is bloated, and when you especially and again spending 21 years in the Army, I have personally seen just the
Mhm.
grossest of abuses in the military themselves. And time after time after time, you see about the $10,000 toilet seats or the $900 nails, or the $10,000 hammers. Um, I'll give you one quick example. This goes all the way back to 1980. This was my first experience with it, 1988. And I was in Fort Benning, Georgia. And we, what they would do is the last 45 days of the fiscal year, they would shut us down and they'd say, okay, all spending has to be approved by this person. So once they got all the expenditures under, then they realized, okay, we have, let's say, $1 million left. I'm just going to
Mhm.
throw that out.
Yeah.
And they came down and said, we have 24 hours to spend $1 million. So go put everything you can on order. And they were mandating. So I went out and was like, I don't know. So there was this old piece of equipment that we never used, but it was old. And if we wanted to use it, we didn't even know if it worked or not. Well, we ordered, there's two components to it. Each was $500. So we ordered a new one, even though we didn't use the old one because we were told, because the mindset is we have to spend what we have because if we don't,
They're
then
going
they're
to
going to
cut you
take it
next time.
away.
Yeah.
So there's no incentives for saving in government if you don't spend it all. And so then it gets spent on personnel that you don't need. It gets spent on resources you don't need. It gets spent on conferences you don't need, on and on and on. And so we just throw billions and billions and billions of dollars around like it's nothing. I've personally seen it. I've personally heard about it. I've I've talked to people who are over the distribution of this money, and I know it sounds like billions of dollars, and they're like, oh, and they will give you a story that's true about somebody's life being affected by this. Well, of course that's going to happen when you go in and make huge cuts.
Yeah.
There's going to be individual stories that are heart-wrenching, but I don't know of an alternative
Yeah,
to,
I don't either, unless you go section by section. And I mean, he could spend his entire 4 years in office just going job by job and trying to find out where to save money. You know, a lot of it, he calls it fraudulent. Hey, I consider the source. I mean, he says a
yeah.
lot of things that come out of his ass, and it is what it is. Um, the other question, and we had an email here from Tim in Birmingham, wanted to know what took so long. And it's a great question. I mean, if we've had so much bloating, and we've known this. I mean, there's segments on nightly news every night. You know, the what do they call it? The shaping of America or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
What's taken so long for us to realize that we've got so much bloating going on in our, I mean, we know we have it, but I mean, I guess we just thought let's let it go and let people die off. And I mean,
Look,
what?
both parties are guilty of this.
Yeah.
They're instead of having consistent principles that both parties work by, um, you tend to overlook things that are not favorable to your party, and you emphasize things that are not right. And so traditionally, Democrats have been known as the more spenders. Republicans are more like, okay, we're going to spend, but we're going to spend through tax cuts. The bottom line is they are both very aggressive in wastefulness, whether it's the defense industry or otherwise. It doesn't matter what program it is, it's all bloat.
Hmm.
Because the bottom line is all of us have been conditioned to evaluate our congressmen by how much pork they bring back and do in the districts. And so, you know, I've been involved in, hey, you're advocating for your senator, and everybody's putting their projects up there, and he's trying to get, and they write these into the bills, and it's such a part of every day. And you've got billions and billions and billions of dollars going out everywhere. And the problem is the Pentagon has never once passed an audit. Now, what does that tell you? So
Mm.
I go through an audit every single year,
Hmm.
and every penny in our organization has to be accounted for, or it gets written up. It would, I would get reported to the USDA, to the Treasury Department, to for donors to see, hey, this organization is lacking transparency, or they have some practices that must change. I mean, it would be devastating to us if year after year, if they were like, hey, this is so messed up, we can't even put these numbers together and make
Sure.
sense of it. Well, when you talk about it, it gets into the trillions of dollars that can't be accounted for in the Defense Department. And then you've already got bloated weapon systems. And it's because of powerful people and pet projects instead of overall stepping back and saying what is good for America in the whole is we're going to fight for our constituencies. And that's what we all expect. We want our guy, we don't want the air base to close in our neighborhood. We
Hmm.
want our congressman to go
Sure.
up there and raise hell to keep that. So Alabama's a good example of that. When Space Command was going to be put in Huntsville. Now, I happen to talk to people who are in authority about that. The truth of the matter is, they did an objective standard, and Huntsville was shown to be the best. Colorado was the fifth best choice, but Biden, through a political decision, gave that over there, and now the hope is Trump brings it back here because you're talking about billions of dollars over years that's going to help the state of Alabama, bringing those people in and all that, and these are the kind of decisions. But I've also seen in joint warfare exercises, so you'll have the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force, and they all have redundant systems. So let's say we all need, I'm just going to make this up. Let's say we all need AM radio communication.
Hmm.
Well, instead of going to one manufacturer to make sure that all the radio systems communicate, everybody has a different manufacturer,
Yeah.
whoever that service wants. And so sometimes you'll get into an exercise, and that's why they do these. So you can practice. If I'm at a joint naval exercise, I'm going to have an Army perspective, maybe an artillery, where you've got artillery, but you've also got ships, you got all this. So you need Army guys, you need Air Force guys, you need Navy guys. They're all in there together. And but the Army system can't communicate with, the Navy system. And then you have the after action review and you find out, well, because these systems are not compatible, yet they're doing the same functions for each one.
Yeah.
But nobody above that is because the Joint Chiefs of Staffs and all that, they'll bring all that kind of stuff up. But then you've got a congressman who's the manufacturer for that radio is in his hometown or in his district, and by God, he's going to have that company build those, whether it's good for the company or not. I mean, good for
Yeah.
the country or not. So I mean, so after a while, you go up there. You know how many times we've seen a lot of people. I'm going to change this. I'm not going up there to make friends. I'm going up there to fix Washington.
Let's sing another kissing ass. Yeah.
They get swallowed whole because
Mm-hmm.
it's the same thing I found in the Army. I was pushing back as a young guy. I thought I knew something. I didn't know anything. It dawned on me pretty quick. I'm not going to change the United States Army. you know so what I have to do is to be effective in the Army is understand the culture of which I'm in and then navigate that successfully to
Sure.
accomplish my goals. Well, that's exactly what every congressman does. They go up there with the idea of nope, I'm gonna, and then all of a sudden, as soon as they want to vote, stand on principle, their leader comes down and says, hey, we need your vote. Now, are you going to be a part of the team or are you not going to be a part of the team? And you're like, yeah, I'll be a part of the team. So you're like, hey, I had all these good intentions, but now I'm swimming upstream. I have to find what's the route for me to be successful to bring, because they'll say things like, hey, do you want that? You want that library built in your district?
Yeah.
If you do, we're going to need your support on this vote.
Yeah, the one thing that I will say this, he's getting a lot done. Just because you get a lot of things done doesn't mean it's good necessarily. And considering that Joe Biden was such a lame duck the last year of his presidency, I mean, it seems like a light speed stuff. Like he's getting stuff done in his first month, and a lot of people would say it would take 4 years to get done. And I don't know how he's.
Yeah.
People need to chill out on these executive orders because just because he's writing an executive order does not mean it's going to be a done deal by any stretch. Some people said like 92% of the things that he's even throwing out there, he's bringing it to our attention to let us know that, hey, listen, this is broken. It needs to be fixed. Will it
Yeah.
change? Probably not. I've got several good friends of mine who do very, very well that are really, really smart. And one of them has lost his job as a professor at a university because they lost their funding because of this. And he does very important work. And he said, it's funny because there's now inside emails that are going around about specific words that you cannot use in your building or in your exercises or as you're running your business, because if the word transition shows up, you're gone. And they're using AI to do this. So AI is going, okay, if you've used the word transition in the last year in your email, you're getting fired. I mean, it's just, so I don't, and again, we're talking, and I hope they bring some of these people back because obviously there are some people that we need to be on these jobs.
Well, here's what I'll tell you about that. I will tell you that if I had to do one or the other, so if I had to have an approach where I go in and I just say, okay, I'm going to cut out 15% of the workforce, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, here's some critical things, and you rehire some people, and they've done that a couple of times,
Mm-hmm.
is generally going to be more effective than going in and saying, okay, let's assess who we need, who we don't need, and in a year come and they drag that out over a year, and then you come back, you've lost all momentum, you're bogged down in other issues that come about.
You're not working your job because you think it's disposable. So you're not even, you're showing up to work and you're not doing anything because you think you're going to get fired for it. Yeah.
Because think about it. You're asking a department, hey, tell me who you think needs to be fired. They're going to come back and they're going to make a justification for everybody they have there. And the reality is, you're not going to make any substantial cuts. But if you come in and go, these people are cut out, then the department heads, if they're on board, the cabinet leaders will come in and go, okay, look, I get it. The cuts were deep, whatever. You want me to go back. Now you got to really, truly justify why this is. And they're going to screen that out and say, no, that Trump's not going to buy that. And I do think we have excessive. I mean, we can't just go endlessly. We're $36 trillion in debt. We're going an additional $2 trillion per year in debt. We can't just do that endlessly. I mean, we already pay over
Why
a
not?
trillion. We already pay over
I'm
a
just asking a
trillion.
question. I've been hearing that since I was born in 1966. Can you tell me why we? I mean, I know we're not AAA plus anymore with the BBB. Blah, blah. Can you really answer that question for me? Why can't we? I mean, I know I can't do it with my credit cards. They'll come find my ass. But can you tell me why, as a country, we can't continue to do what we're doing, or what will end up happening? I know.
Eventually, the debt becomes too great as related to GDP, and then what ends up happening is you'll get hyperinflation because the dollar won't have the value,
Yeah,
and look, it's all built on the truth of the matter is it's all built on a house of cards. The whole financial system
sure.
is built on a house of cards. When Nixon took us off the gold standard, there's nothing backing the dollar. The only reason I can give you $20 of a piece of paper and you give me goods like food is because we all agree that this piece of paper has this value.
Yeah.
And and so you saw it in Germany after World War II. There was hyperinflation. I mean, you'd
Mhm.
have to have a wheelbarrow full of marks to get a loaf of bread.
I've got a lot of those marks too. They're worth nothing now, but
Yeah,
they
and so you don't. I mean, eventually you can't just keep going further and further. Like right now, over $1 trillion uh, to maintain the debt. We pay over $1 trillion a year. That's larger than our defense budget on just interest on our debt.
yeah.
So it's $1 trillion of tax dollars that are going that just keep us where we are. They don't add anything. It's just paying on the debt. And so when you see that and you see billions and billions and billions going out, and you're like, well, not only is that wasteful, but now that's all money we've borrowed. We're
Yeah.
borrowing it to send it out and do those kind of things.
Couple things. First of all, I wish like hell we could get rid of lawyers. I know we have to have lawyers, but we are such a litigious society, and all this stuff's going to court, and the
Yeah.
lawyers are the ones making all the money. I'm seriously. I mean, if you just go back the last 4 years and all the court stuff we had to do, just because of all the investigations we've done on Trump and on Biden and on Biden's son and this that. I mean, just if we took all that money, we'd have more money than we wanted to do with. I mean,
Yeah.
period. That's the one thing. The other thing I thought was really interesting, you may already know this, but I heard something the other night. You're talking about the gold standard, that if you took every ounce of gold that was ever mined in the history of the world, it would fill up an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and that's it.
Huh. I've not heard that.
And I was like, wow, that doesn't sound like a whole lot. But you could take every piece of gold ever mined, and it would fit in an Olympic-sized swimming pool, to show you just how valuable that commodity is. Um, the Let me ask you this, and we could probably just do the entire show on this, and I think this is really remarkable because I'm learning a lot today too. What happens next? He's saying we've saved 50, $60 billion. Of course, we can't find those numbers, and there was an eight with an extra zero behind it, and people are like, "That's 8 million, not 8 billion." I mean, I'm like, so let's just say we save $100 billion.
Okay.
We were going to cut. We haven't brought anybody back. We saved 100. I know he's talking about giving 20% to us, and then putting 20% towards the
Yeah. What do you do with the savings?
yeah, what's going to happen? Because I mean, there are billions and billions of dollars that aren't being spent right now, and I as a taxpayer, I want to know where that money's going. I want to know what's happening here. What
Yeah.
do you think? What ha-
Well,
what
there's three things you can do with it. You can give it back to the taxpayers in a form of a rebate. You can pay it forward into prepay into something, or it's almost impossible for Congress to retract spending once it's appropriated, because lots of times it's appropriated a couple of years prior, and it doesn't gets spent out over time.
to me, there's no way in hell they're taking this money and paying off our debt with it. I mean, I know how I am with my credit cards. When I come into some extra money, the last thing I'm paying off is my credit cards because I know they're there and I know they're going to be there. I'll pay off a little bit so I can use it again, but I'm not paying off my credit card debt. And because it's such a small drop in the bucket, if we put $100 billion towards our debt, who gives a rip? I mean, it doesn't change anything. It really, I mean, think about it. It doesn't change anything.
Well, that's why. But if you think about this, so that's lots of times what I hear the argument from people is, look, we have a $4 trillion budget with a $36 trillion debt, $100 billion is a drop in the bucket. Well, that's true. It is a drop in the bucket. It- but if you build in a culture to where what you're doing is you are trimming each department, and the truth of the matter is, when you get to right now that there's talk on some initial looks that there's as much money going out in Medicare and Medicaid fraud
Yeah.
as this going out that we're paying for actual legitimate claims.
I believe it.
So when you think of, but you're gonna have to, everybody says until you fix entitlements. Okay, so that's Social Security, that's Medicare. Well, if you could eliminate first, or identify and eliminate as much fraud. Now, I don't know if this is for sure. The estimate was 4 million people are drawing Social Security that are over 100 years old. I don't think we have 4 million people in America that are over 100 years old. Now,
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
You could be wrong.
So but did you see the thing on the like the federal retirement? So they literally, if you apply for federal retirement, it's still done by paperwork, and it's taken down to a cave, a limestone cave that they keep all the paperwork there, and you go in and try. So they talked about how difficult it is and how much money is wasted, how many people they need because they can't automate the process.
Yeah.
This is really where I think savings, efficiencies, and all that is. You go in, you eliminate people, and you upgrade into and getting the systems automated and getting them online.
We can build a
And
quantum computer, but we can't update our Social Security. I mean, it's like,
that's a fact.
yeah,
It's a fact. And so what we continue to do is year after year, it's like it's a project that's too big. When you were saying a minute ago, why do people do that? It's such a big animal just to get your hands around it.
sure.
And even something, if you go inside of a department like the personnel department, just for who manages federal workers, and you see a cave, a literal limestone cave that they store people's records, that a truck driver drives there once a week and deposits more retirements. And then if you can't look it up in the, I mean, it's mind boggling, as technologically
It
advanced
is.
as we are, that we can't streamline so many of those processes and save
And you
on
probably
what
see
goes.
this by working certainly at the Heart of Alabama Food Bank, and then formerly of the Jimmy Hale Mission. I've seen friends of mine that went from sleeping in the back seat of their cars one week and then coming into some money. And in particular, I can think of one friend he's been blessed so many times, and the last time he was blessed, I mean, the guy just can't stay out of his own way. And he goes up and down and up and down. And somewhere, someone found oil on a piece of land that was owned by his uncle that he has a piece of that he didn't know. And he got a check for like $60,000. And I was like, $60,000. This guy's living in the backseat of his car. And when you come into that kind of money, when you're so far in debt, if you got $1 million health bill and you come into an extra $50,000, your thinking is, well, I'm not going to put, maybe I'll put $100 towards it, but I'm not going to put all that money towards it because it's going to be such a small debt. And I think that's how we look at a lot of our deficiencies and a lot of our debts in this country. We're so deep in that if we throw that money at it, it's not going to make that big of a deal. At least maybe make a payment on it, which is
And
certainly
the truth is, we treat it like it's not our, hey, it's not our money. I
no.
mean, we wouldn't, we are prevented from living like the government. The government has zero accountability.
Yeah.
People do not lose jobs. You go to the Pentagon and you're like, it's so messed up. Now, I would like to picture myself back the first time the Pentagon got a true audit, and they said, we can't even get through it. There's X amount of dollars. Now, transparency would have been right then, okay, yes, we have to continue to operate, but no new systems. I mean, I would hold everything up until we account for where we are and then put systems in place.
Yeah.
But it's too big. There's too much of an outcry. You're risking the country's safety,
And we're
the
too far
world's
gone.
safety.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
and so again, presidents, make all these promises. Congress people make all these promises. It just shows you how big of a mess it is, and that government is necessary. I think the system of government is ordained by God to bring order into our world. That's why you see it at the federal level, the state level, the local level, county level, local level. I'm not anti-government at all. It's necessary and it's good. But it is, the higher you go, the grosser the mismanagement and the waste and the fraud, or opportunities for fraud, certainly. And we have such a behemoth now that politicians don't even want to admit it because it falls on them. How did this happen under your watch?
I mean, why do you think McConnell was there for 40 years? I mean, it's good. Like, Kip Kiefer, of course, does a political show on our station called Need to Know. And he's like, these guys make $180,000 a year and they're living in $7 million homes. Do the math. I mean, there's a gated community right outside Washington, D.C., where all these people are hunkered down. They make $180,000 a year, and they're living in $7 million homes. Just do the math. It really
there's a new app out there that I just heard advertised or heard talked about last night, that this guy is tied into all the elected officials. I don't know how he does it, but it follows their trades, because the reason they get so wealthy is they get insider information, which is illegal, about IPOs being offered, all this kind of stuff. And so they're the first ones there. So, and that's how you go from making $180,000 a year, and all of a sudden, like Nancy Pelosi, they said multi-millionaire, and has been in government. She's, I guess, getting close to retirement, but been in government for 40 or 50 years. Same thing. Mitch McConnell. It's not the party. They're all guilty of it. And just really using that to their advantage. And boy, it just erodes trust. It erodes confidence. So I think just some of the gut reaction to, I get, Trump can be described as a bull who takes a china shop with him wherever he goes. I mean, he breaks things. But I also get the pushback of, I don't know of another approach that's going to make a dent into how bad the problem is.
True. Yeah. And I mean, time will tell. Time will tell. Mission mind, keep in mind your mission in your mind. We take your emails. We only got to one today, but that's fine. Good stuff. info@TonyCurryRadio.net. info@TonyCurryRadio.net. On these same stations on Tony Curry Radio, you're going to hear BBB, Bite by Bite, coming up here next. A show specific towards food pantries in the heart of Alabama Food Bank. Michael, till next week, thank you so much. I hope you feel better, brother.
Thanks, my friend.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.